Welcome to the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast. Coming right up, fresh tips and insights from lodging professionals aimed at helping you improve your business. Our podcast is brought to you by the Frictionless Guest App, which helps improve your guest stay without adding more to your day. Learn how at frictionlessguest.com. All right, Steve, how you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. How about you, Matt?
I'm doing well. I'm pretty excited about this podcast because we seem to be branching out into different venues with the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast. And this one is pretty unique. We're speaking with Jim Snediker, who's the co-founder and CEO of Stock Mfg Co, which is really a top workwear creator for premium hospitality brands. So they make all of the kind of clothes and uniform. And it's a good one. And it's different. Don't you think?
It is different. Yeah, it is cool. Pretty cool story for him and how they kind of fell into this or just twisted the long and winding road that got them into this business. And pretty cool to hear about, the type of stuff that they do and the way that their clients, use uniforms. It's not something that you kind of think of automatically, but it's like, wow, yeah, some of the stuff, some of the clothing that they have and what they can do really can make a difference in projecting an image, whether you're just a little independent innkeeper, lodging professional, or boutique, or even a big brand. So it's important stuff. And I think it's worthwhile for our listener group to hear it.
Yeah, I agree. That tees it up perfectly. And we'll just pass it off to the actual podcast. And we hope you all enjoy this episode of the Frictionless Innkeeper podcast with Jim Snediker, co-founder and CEO of Stock Mfg Co, which, as we talked about, is a top workwear creator for hospitality brands. We hope you enjoy. For this Frictionless Innkeeper podcast interview, we are speaking with Jim Snediker, who's the co-founder and CEO of Stock Mfg Company, which is a top workwear creator for premium hospitality brands. And of course, once again, we're joined by Steve Short. And Jim and Steve, how you both doing today?
Very well. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Yeah. Great to have you. Steve, how you doing?
Doing well as usual, Matt.
Awesome. Love hearing that. Yeah. Hey, Jim, thanks again for joining us today. I know this is usually a sector that we really haven't covered off on in our podcast. So especially when it comes to workwear for hospitality brands. And, before we really dive into it, would love to hear more about Stock Mfg Company and how you got started and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. It's a long, winding story, so I'll try to keep it as short as I can. So we've been in business about 9 years now, and we started the company as a menswear brand. So we were an all made in USA, kind of like traditional sportswear men's brand. So button down shirts, chinos, jackets, that sort of thing. Did that we were running the business for about a year, kind of just literally growing it on our own. We had no money. We were partnered with a factory in Chicago who generously allowed us to work out of the back. And we were literally pulling old dead stock fabric off the shelves of their factory and cutting it up into ties and shirts and selling it at like street festivals and pop-up shops to try to get some money in the bank and get our website built. Launched the website, and within about a year of being in business, very interestingly, Alinea Restaurant Group approached us and asked us to do new custom uniforms for Alinea and Next. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Chicago dining scene, but back in 2013 or whatever this was, like Alinea was, I think, the number one rated restaurant in the world by some certain places. So we ended up working with them and created these like really cool custom server jackets. And they're actually still wearing those to this day at both locations. And then, as you guys know, it's a small industry. And when you work with someone who's kind of at the top of that industry, word travels pretty fast. And for a couple of years, we just kept getting more and more inbound uniform business. Alinea turned into, we did some stuff for Goose Island and then a couple different Let Us Entertain You restaurants. And then we ended up in 2015 doing the entire Soho House Chicago when they opened in Chicago, like top to bottom, meeting with, the executives at the company, taking hard hat tours. It was the whole shebang. And that really kind of put us on a new trajectory on the uniform business. That's when we really started being like, we should start. We weren't even promoting that we did uniforms. It was all word of mouth. And we were still just running the menswear brand and doing a lot of really cool things as a menswear company as well, and seeing some success there. But after the Soho House thing, we just started getting more and more inbound traffic. and started putting the uniform stuff more prominently on the website and in our messaging. And in 2019, we completely switched the business over to workwear uniform focused, changed up our operations, cut out a lot of trimmed a lot of the fat of our product offering, and have really since then just been hyper focused on creating the best, primarily front of house focused workwear brand that there is.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's interesting because, I mean, there's got to be uniform companies out there. How would you, and I know you focus more on hospitality, and I'm not really thinking beyond hospitality, but I'm sure there's all kinds of needs beyond that. But hospitality seems like it's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you kind of started off, would you consider yourself sort of a niche player because you do like smaller, unbranded, or places that want to really project their brand? I mean, how would you say that you fit into this market of, or workwear uniform stuff?
Yeah, sure. So traditionally for uniforms, as I'm sure you guys know, there's been like the major players for a long time. There's Cintas and Aramark and the people where it's primarily like a rental driven business. Essentially, you're just getting stuff that's 100% poly that you can beat to shit and launder and yada, yada, yada. And then what we found as we were getting started, especially the way hospitality's evolved over the last decade or so, the focus on every aspect of the guest experience, from the fonts and the lettering on the menus to the sound design inside the restaurant or the hotel. Uniforms are kind of a natural extension of that and an integral part of the brand, the presentation of your staff. And what we found pretty early on is we didn't need to even consider trying to compete on price or offering with the Cintas's, the Aramarks, or even like the Chef Works, because what a lot of restaurants and hotels were doing is they were going retail. They were going to J. Crew or Suit Supply or whatever and ordering all of their uniforms for their staff retail. And, we saw places that had 12 tables in a restaurant doing this. And we saw hotels with, 240 room hotels doing this. And what happens there is you end up, there's really no customer service or support. And then you get in love with this uniform, you buy 20 grand worth for your staff, and then they discontinue that style the next season, or it's sold out for 6 months. So us coming from a retail and manufacturing background, we're able to kind of control the whole supply chain and guarantee the continuity while also lending, our design expertise to the actual creation of the uniform.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're a niche player, but we believe that niche is very big and growing.
Right.
That's what we're focused on.
Makes sense. So there are a lot of smaller, at least maybe larger as well, companies that either have no branding, but use these stock type clothing or whatever. But then maybe are there others that really haven't given any thought other than, here's our logo, put it on the shirt, and you kind of go beyond that in terms of, okay, what kind of shirt and is this logo? Do we need a refresh or what do you work with brands or small companies and have them, I don't know, enhance the brand, I guess? Or
yeah, we have. A lot of times the places we're working with have already invested a lot of money and time into the branding aspect of the business. So we are not necessarily coming in and like redoing a logo for someone. But to your point, so a lot of places go completely unbranded, or they go the traditional ways, the embroidery on, above the chest pocket or whatever. We can do that. Someone can order 12 Oxford shirts from us and we'll throw their embroidery on and send it. But we're a little bit more consultative. Like something we like to do a little bit more than throwing your logo on an embroidery is, do an enamel pin out of your iconography or something that's a little bit more like a branded point without being that kind of just traditional polo with logo embroidered on it.
Okay.
So yeah, we lend our design expertise, but at the end of the day, like we're not really reworking people's brands.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. But would you design, like you were talking about, like Alinea? So the server jackets, you design those totally from scratch, right? I mean,
yep. And in the early days, that's how we did everything. Every project we took on, was totally custom from the ground up. Like that was pattern work, sampling, development, the whole 9 yards. I mean, we were doing that. We got to the point where we had 20, 30, 40 projects going on at any given time. And we're literally sourcing fabric and ordering buttons and stuff. And that's a couple of years ago. That's when we kind of decided to standardize things a little bit more. So we didn't have any offerings for people that they could order off the rack or off the shelf. You know, it was only custom. So we then decided to start building out our in-stock offerings. So if you go on our website, any of the stuff, the aprons, the shirts, the pants, the chore coats, the blazers, those are all in-stock items. You know, you can go and order a dozen of those, one of those, 250 of those, and you get price breaks as you go up, and there's no MOQs, there's minimal lead times. But if none of that is what you're looking for your place, if you have a specific idea of something you want, we can still do the fully from the ground up custom stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
When it comes to our listener base is lodging professionals, and whether it's independent innkeeper types or maybe more boutique hotel types, talk about, I guess, the more specifically hotels, like what kind of stuff that you've done for hotels, or if there's even, kind of more independent type places, more, inns and bed and breakfast and that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. So the places that are more like the inns, the B&Bs, the smaller places, those are the type of clientele we had in mind when we designed our in-stock program. So that's something where we can help pull from our catalog and our offering and design a custom uniform program. We can put logos, add a pin in or whatever, but it's really working off these base models to keep in mind, A, the minimum order quantities and the lead times, and B, the turnover issues, right? Like you don't want to order a uniform piece that's a 50-piece MOQ and takes 4 to 6 weeks to get to you. And then you turn over 3 staff members and you need to order 4 shirts or 6 shirts. And you're not able to do that because there's the MOQ, because it's custom. So that's why we put this, these more in-stock offerings in place. Then we work with places, for example, a client of ours is Auberge Hotels and Resorts. And, we did a place of theirs out in Telluride recently where, we are literally creating vests for the bartenders to complement the upholstery inside the restaurant. It was just the whole project was very specific to their place. And then we still added in, I think a couple of their positions are still wearing like our blue chambray button-up shirt, but then they layered in all these custom pieces on top of that. And then another example is we work a lot with the Aparium Hotel Group. They're one of our oldest customers in the hotel space. And they were doing everything super custom on a property by property basis. And what we've done is like standardized a lot of their offerings across the portfolio. These are their core styles that they use. And then we create little individual unique things on a venue by venue basis to capture that local flavor. But, it's an ease of, there's economy of scale, there's quicker lead times and everything when you can kind of standardize things across a portfolio.
How do your clients, how do they view, I guess, the idea of differentiating, and how do you want a brand and you want a consistent, like you say, guest experience, but at the same time, you don't want to be too stodgy, so how do you go about, what's their perspective from what you can gather on how do I keep this unique vibe and brand, but not make it look like I got a bunch of robots walking around? Because that's the uniqueness of whether it's boutique hotels or whatever, So I'm curious, maybe it's but at the same time, it's professional, especially if you have an upscale hotel, boutique hotel, whatever. It's professional to have uniforms, just somebody coming in with, so I'm just curious how they walk that line,
Yeah. So a lot of new operators or newer operators have very grand designs often on what their uniform program is going to look like with their new hotel that they're opening, right? Like where I saw this jacket at this runway show that I was at in Italy, and I'm going to recreate that jacket for us. It's a $1,200 jacket. I'm hoping you guys can make it for us for $80. We're going to do, just a very, very, there tends to be these big eyes around the excitement of the new venue. And, you've got your opening budget and everything. And then the day-to-day operations after 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. And also, of course, the last year and a half has sort of changed even a little bit the way people are dealing with budgets. But the reality of the operations often comes into play, and some of those more custom items end up getting trimmed out. And that is where we kind of try to come in and help guide them to something that's custom and cool and unique without being burdensome to source and produce and keep in stock for them. And then from the other perspective, a lot of the really experienced operators know that these issues are going to arise, so they keep them in mind. So they work with us from day one on creating something that's going to be on brand for them, but also replicable and scalable and easy to manage. And that's sort of, I think, you can build a brand identity without having like a bunch of crazy custom stuff, right? Like someone walks into your hotel and your front desk employee is in a nice fitting button-up shirt and a cool blazer that doesn't look like a traditional Joseph A. Banks suit jacket. And they're in well-tailored pants and a cool little pin accessory, or, you got your valets are in like a Carhartt style winter beanie with like a quilted parka. Like, you are projecting your brand to your clientele just by having everyone look upscale or on brand for what you're trying to get across. Where I think where people get in a lot of trouble is they get way too far out ahead and too excited what they're doing. And then they just let the uniform program fall apart. And you go in and you've got one guy in a black jacket, one girl in a gray sweatshirt, and everything's just mishmashed and looking scattered.
I'm glad you brought that up about like the front desk person or whatever, because I'm thinking if I'm a small independent, 50-room hotel, or even, even if I'm a, what you'd consider an inn, let's say, 12 rooms, 5 rooms, whatever, but I have some staff, or even if it's just, husband and wife. I mean, I guess the bed and breakfast thing, maybe not so much, but I mean, there is value in having, even if it's like some sort of a pullover or something like that with some branding. I mean, there is, but certainly if it's staff, you've got to, if you're an upscale place, you've got to project this image. You can't necessarily rely upon the front desk person, who's probably not getting paid a whole lot to come in and wear something that you consider acceptable. And even if it is okay, professional looking, you're right, it's still not projecting the same image that you might want to project. What other clothing stuff? I'm trying to think, like, what else would apply? Like, I guess, if I'm a bed and breakfast, aprons, right? I guess would be kind of important. I don't know. What other stuff kind of fits the small hotel and innkeeper sort of mode?
It's really anything: shirts, blazers, light jackets. It also depends on the vibe of your place, right? If it's a traditional New England B&B, you put everyone in a blue button-down Oxford shirt and a pair of navy chinos, like that's just a nice, crisp, classic look. If you're looking to make something a little more modern and funky, like, maybe you've got the front desk in a custom baseball cap along with just a white t-shirt tucked into a pair of dark jeans. Like, there's just different, really anything can be a uniform piece. It just depends on what you're looking to do. But the items that we sell the most of to hotels are shirts, blazers, and light jackets.
Cool. Hey, Jim, this is Matt. I had one question, and you've probably run across this with your clients. Like when you mentioned earlier, the guy at the front desk who's got kind of the hip Euro cut blazer, the cool pants and everything. Is there any connection or anything that you've seen with your hospitality clients where by having them dress this way in this hipster-like upscale gear, does it enhance employee morale? Does it enhance the guest experience? I know if I was working in a hotel and I'm wearing a Jose Banks blazer that's like massive and huge from 1990, I'm not going to feel too good about myself or my job. But if I'm wearing something pretty hip and Euro cut, I'll feel good about myself and I'll probably treat the guest a little bit better. Is there any connection there on that?
Yes. So an anecdotal thing from my own personal life is after college, for a while, I bartended and served at a restaurant in the suburbs of Chicago. And they had us in something that was just like, 100% polyester, maroon blouse, basically, with like a black no collar top. And we had to wear black pants and black shoes. So I'm 22, 23, and I get off my shift at 10 or 11 at this place, and I want to go out. And what I'm doing is changing in the parking lot out of my uniform and throwing into the back of my car, throwing on jeans and a t-shirt or a button down or whatever, and going out to meet my friends. And when we were first started designing uniforms, part of the thing that we said was like, we'd like to have a uniform program for you where your staff can punch out and walk, this is, a place in the West Loop is specifically what I'm thinking of, walk down the street to Lone Wolf or whatever cool bars in the neighborhood and just like unbutton their top button, roll their sleeves up, and they look like they belong out. Like they don't have to go home. So that's definitely a part of it. I also remember being at a very prominent hotel in Michigan right before COVID. And we were staying there, and I was talking to the bar staff about their uniforms, and the girls are in what looked like men's vests that the women bartenders are being forced to make with like a button down shirt. And they were like, it's terrible. We look like we're wearing men's clothing. We're supposed to be bartenders. Like we're not comfortable. We don't feel good about ourselves. So those are the types of things that I think really do affect employees. So that's definitely the way that we try to approach the uniform programs, is like stuff that is retail quality, stuff that you think would be cool if you'd just gone and bought it at a department store or online.
That makes me think, I just totally forgot this. Of course, I'm an old guy, but back when I was in college, I worked at Howard Johnson's for a couple of years, waiting tables at the restaurant. And we had to wear these ridiculous vests and bow ties and stuff. And like, oh my gosh, yeah. Not that I would have given any greater service if I would have felt a little bit more upscale or something, because it's a Howard Johnson's, but still, yeah. I mean, those are the kinds of things where you're right. I mean, you walk out in the parking lot and you're taking that thing off and you're just like, oh, this, get me out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's a lot of conversation right now in the industry or I guess the country as a whole about paying people their worth and making people feel valued at their job. And I think it says a lot about the way a company views their staff when they're looking at them as nothing but like a bottom line item. It's like when you get something that's 100% poly and it fits horribly and it looks terrible, like that is a message being sent to the staff that like, you're here for me to kind of burn through you and then you're going to move on.
Yeah. We're not spending a whole lot on these uniforms because, you're just going to trash them, or you're not going to be here in a couple months anyway, or whatever. Right.
Right. And I don't want to make it sound like we're like, crazy expensive. It's not like we're not the difference between going to like just paying some Brunello Cucinelli or something, right? Like we are very conscious of budgets. We're conscious of operations and supply chain. We're not the cheapest, but we're also far from the most expensive option out there.
Mm-hmm. You talked about at the beginning that you had somebody making your stuff in Chicago. Where is your stuff made now?
So we still make all of our aprons in Chicago. It's because we sell them at low MOQs and it takes a little bit less manual time to make an apron than a shirt or a pair of pants. So we still make all those in Chicago. The vast majority of our wovens, so like button down shirts, pants, jackets, that sort of thing, are made in Turkey, actually in a factory in Istanbul. And then knits and hats, like headwear and knits, like, sweatshirts, t-shirts, that kind of stuff is generally made in China. We've got one factory that we work with in China. By
the way, what's MOQ stand for?
Oh, minimum order quantity.
I figured the Q was quantity and it meant a certain quantity. Okay, minimum order quantity. Must be an industry term.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So now you already kind of gave your background and all of that stuff, or kind of the quick history. But what would you say from an entrepreneurial perspective? I'm just curious about, you struggled for a while, right? And it sounds like you just kind of found your niche. It's what I hear all the time and read all the time in terms of marketing and business approach, that, you have to differentiate and you have to kind of say, well, we make clothing, or no, we specifically make, workwear for where you're, more uniform focused or whatever. But that probably didn't happen overnight. You had this early opportunity and it kind of pivoted you that towards what you're doing now. But I mean, it sounds like you were, at least for a couple of years, that you were pretty challenged until you sort of found this niche. Is that right?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, so 2019, we switched we formally flipped the website to be all, workwear focused and everything in Q1 of 2019. And 2019 was the only year that we were in business where we didn't grow revenue over the year before. So we always had a business and it was going in the right direction. It's just year one, we started it like under $200,000 in revenue, right? So like it was really starting almost from nothing and building it up. And then since we've made that switch, it took the first half of 2019 to kind of get the ball rolling. But yeah, you're right. It's been a venture capitalist wouldn't say that we have exponential growth, but the way that our business was running for 5-6 years compared to the last, even with COVID, compared to the last almost 2 years is pretty quick. So yeah, we definitely, in the very beginning, I was getting up in the morning and driving Uber during rush hour and then going in, working a full day. And then a couple nights a week was bartending in Wrigleyville on Cubs rooftops. So, it was definitely the grind and the hustle and all that stuff, but it was always going in the right direction, just never as quickly as we wanted for a while.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So you've got some sort of a cannabis industry connection here. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so we do uniforms for one of our biggest clients in the whole business is Cresco Labs. They're a pretty big cannabis company out of Chicago. We do all the uniforms for the bud tenders at the Sunnyside dispensaries. That's their like consumer facing brand. So they're growing like crazy and we're just. Did
you say bud tenders?
Yeah, that's what everyone calls the retail operators at the cannabis.
At a dispensary or whatever?
Yep. Yeah, so we outfit them. Yeah, we outfit them. We did work with another pretty big one for a while, but they got sold and there was a big shakeup. So we lost that. And now we're just starting to work with a fairly big chain out of Denver now.
Yeah, that's great. I've seen a dispensary out in Venice, California at Abbott Kinney, and I might have told you about it, Steve. It looks like an Apple store. I mean, it's all white and it's the sleekest thing that I've ever seen. So it makes sense, especially for kind of like an upscale dispensary, to really have a nice high quality uniform that's hip and conveys the brand. It makes sense for you to go after that niche as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the cannabis industry was, for the first several years, it was put a sign out front and you'll have a line down the street because you're the only game in town. And now, just like in the restaurant or the hotel industry, you got to start doubling down on making yourself more attractive than the competitors are.
Is the stuff made out of hemp? Is there hemp clothing? That would be.
So the first big uniform program we did was for a company called Grassroots. And we were working with them like pre-legalization. They were getting everything ready. And we did some really, really, really cool stuff. And we used a hemp and cotton blend fabric for like these work shirts and shirt dresses and all this cool stuff. Put a lot of time into those uniforms. And then they got sold and pretty much everyone we worked with left the company. So we haven't worked them in about a year. But yes, so the first uniform program we did, we incorporated hemp. We do not do that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like it would be a cool idea. I guess, where do you see things going from here with your business as well as just in the industry? And again, looking at this just for our listening, group, maybe more on the kind of the lodging professional side of things. And where do you see things evolving to in terms of the whole workwear uniform approach or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, from the business side, what we're working on a lot is creating an experience for our clients that is much more web focused than manual. Like we want it to be very simple for people to go on our website, pick out the things they want, understand what the products are, purchase them, get their bulk discounts applied automatically, get them shipped to them with progress updates on when things are arriving. For some of our bigger clients, we've been building out custom microsites for them so they can go in and just, you work for Aperium Hotel Group and you're at the Hotel Hyatt in Tampa, click into the Aperium microsite, go to Hotel Hyatt and just click, order all the things that you need. So from our end, we're trying to standardize that to kind of help us as we grow. So not everything's so manual. And then from the actual design side of uniforms, really there's so many different types of venues out there that it's hard to say there's one kind of trend in uniforms, because there are still places where people are in black suits and the girls are in cocktail dresses. And it's, we still work with steakhouses that are in the white blazer and, the traditional stuff. We're seeing the uniforms reflect a lot more of the trend of interior design, which is a lot more light and airy and kind of boho. You're not doing as much, you're not seeing as many of like the dark wooden leather mixology focused places. Even I'm sure you guys seen with the hotels that are being built, there's just a lot more like light and natural wood and plants and kind of abstract, colorful art, as opposed to, oil portraits and dark wood and stuff like that. So our uniform offering has been reflecting that as well, but there's really just a lot of places and there's a lot of legacy places as well. So we're not kind of all in on one style, I'd say.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. We focus a lot on the fit, the fabric, the quality, and the ability to painlessly stock and fulfill things, which supply chain stuff has been an absolute nightmare over the last 6 months, but we're fighting the good fight as best we can and trying to get ahead of things.
So, yeah. And talking about the minimum order quantity, the MOQ thing. So if I'm a small lodging professional, I just have my 10-room place or whatever, what kind of quantities do I have to order? I guess it totally depends on the quality in terms of the cost, but what are my minimum kind of order quantities for stuff like shirts, blazers, whatever, pullovers?
Sure. Yeah. Anything on the website, any of the things that you or any of these listeners see on our website, there is no minimum order quantity. You can go on and buy one of everything anytime you want. If you place a bulk order for your opening, say you order 25 shirts, 25 aprons, and we'll lock you in at that kind of tiered discount. And then moving forward, if you just order one shirt and one apron, you're locked into that discount level moving forward as well. So the only things that have minimum order quantities are the custom items. And those range from as low as 25 units to there are some things that are 100-piece minimums. Yeah. And then we have clients who have a very aggressive price discount in which their minimum order quantities are higher because, we have them locked into a very, very specific price point for their custom items.
Yeah. Makes sense. Cool. Yeah. Matt, you want to lead us out or what?
Yeah. Jim, really appreciate your time today. I know we covered off on a lot. And before we sign off today, anything else to add or anything we may have missed?
No, that's really it. You guys asked some really great questions. That was a very fun podcast.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, this concludes this Frictionless Innkeeper podcast interview with Jim Snediker, who is the co-founder and CEO of Stock Mfg Co, which is a top workwear creator for premium hospitality brands. And our podcast is brought to you by the Frictionless Guest App, which helps improve your guest stay without adding more to your day. Learn more at frictionlessguest.com. And Jim and Steve, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it. It was fun.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks a lot, Jim. Appreciate the time.